The autumn sun bathed the quiet streets of suburban Chicago with a warm golden light. On that Saturday afternoon, the neighborhood breathed a typical weekend calm, with the occasional bark of a dog or the distant laughter of children playing. At 28 Oak Street, little Emily, just 7 years old, was taking advantage of the pleasant day to play on the sidewalk in front of her house. With her brown hair tied in 2 braids and wearing a denim overall already stained with chalk, Emily was absorbed in her world of colorful drawings. By her side, lying on the neatly trimmed lawn, was Max, the family's faithful Labrador. With his golden fur gleaming in the sun, Max kept a watchful eye on his little companion, his ears occasionally moving to catch distant sounds. Emily's mother, Sarah, watched the scene from the living room window while finishing up some paperwork. As a pediatrician, she had always valued outdoor time for children's healthy development. Seeing her daughter so happy and carefree brought a smile to her lips. Emily's father, Tom, was in the backyard, making some repairs to the fence. The soft sound of his hammering echoed through the air, mixing with the familiar noises of the neighborhood. It was an afternoon like many others, or at least so it seemed. Emily was completely immersed in her drawing, carefully tracing the outline of a house with a big heart in the center. Her face was furrowed in concentration, her tongue slightly out, a habit she had when focused on a task. Suddenly, a distant growl cut through the air. Max immediately raised his head, his ears perking up in alert. Emily, still absorbed in her drawing, didn't notice the sudden change in atmosphere. The growl grew louder, closer. It was then that Emily finally looked up from her drawing. A few yards away, a large, unfamiliar dog was slowly approaching. Its dark fur was bristling, teeth bared in a threatening growl. The animal's eyes were fixed on Emily, who remained paralyzed, the chalk falling from her small hand. Time seemed to slow down. Emily felt her heart racing, but she couldn't move. Fear kept her glued to the ground, unable to scream or run. The strange dog took another step toward her, the growl intensifying with each passing second. It was at this moment that Max sprang into action. With a loud, determined bark, he launched himself from the grass, positioning himself between Emily and the threatening dog. His golden fur was bristling, teeth bared. But his posture was purely defensive. Max wasn't there to fight, but to protect. The intruding dog hesitated for a moment, surprised by the sudden intervention. Taking advantage of this hesitation, Max barked again, this time louder and firmer. It was a clear warning. Don't come any closer. The scene that followed lasted only a few seconds, but to Emily, it felt like an eternity. The strange dog, realizing it wouldn't have an easy prey, slowly backed away. Max maintained his position, not advancing but also not yielding an inch. His eyes were fixed on the intruder, his body tense and ready to act if necessary. Finally, with a last growl of frustration, the strange dog turned and ran away, quickly disappearing down the street. Only then did Max relax, turning to Emily and gently licking her hand, as if to say that everything was all right now. The scream trapped in Emily's throat finally came out, not as a cry of fear, but as a sob of relief. She threw her arms around Max's neck, burying her face in his soft fur. Attracted by the noise, Sarah and Tom ran outside, finding their daughter hugging the dog, trembling slightly. They quickly understood what had happened. Sarah knelt beside Emily, wrapping her in a tight hug, while Tom scanned the street, looking for any sign of the intruding dog. "Faz, it's okay, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, stroking Emily's hair. "You're safe now." Tom joined the hug, his voice trembling slightly as he spoke. "Max saved us, didn't he? He's our hero." Emily nodded, still clinging to Max's neck. The Labrador remained patient, as if understanding the girl's need for comfort. In the days that followed, the family processed what had happened. The incident, although frightening, had revealed something extraordinary about Max. It wasn't just his courage that impressed them, but the calm and controlled manner in which he had handled the situation. It was Sarah who first raised the idea. "What if we could train Max to help other people?" she suggested during dinner. A few days later, "There are therapy dog programs. Max clearly has the temperament for it." Tom enthusiastically agreed. "We could start with something small, see how he does." Emily, who had been even more attached to Max since the incident, was excited about the idea. "Can Max be a superhero for other kids too?" she asked, her eyes shining. The decision was made that night. They would explore training possibilities for Max, with the goal of turning him into a certified therapy dog. What they didn't know was that this decision would not only change Max's life, but would also open doors to a much larger project than any of them could imagine. As the family excitedly discussed future plans, Max rested at their feet, his eyes moving from one face to another as if understanding that something important was happening. Somehow, he seemed to know that his life was about to change and that new challenges and adventures awaited him. Night fell over Oak Street, enveloping house number 28 in a mantle of quietude. But inside that house, a new energy pulsed. A seed had been planted, an idea that would grow and flourish, touching more lives than they could foresee at that moment. And so, with Max lying at Emily's feet as she prepared for bed, the first chapter of this new journey came to an end. But it was just the beginning of a much larger story. A story of courage, compassion, and the transformative power of love between humans and animals. The weeks that followed Max's departure for the Healing Paws Training Center dawned cloudy, as if the sky reflected the mix of emotions hovering over the Wilson household. Emily, still in her pajamas, clung to Max in the living room, her red eyes betraying a sleepless night. "You promise you'll behave well, Max," she murmured, burying her face in the Labrador's soft fur. Max, as if understanding the gravity of the moment, remained exceptionally quiet, occasionally licking Emily's face in a gesture of comfort. Sarah and Tom observed the scene, their hearts heavy. Although convinced they were making the right decision, seeing their daughter's distress made everything more difficult. "It's time, sweetie," Sarah said softly, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Remember, Max will come home every weekend, and we can visit him on Wednesdays." Emily nodded silently, wiping her tears with the back of her hands. With one last tight hug for Max, she stood up, allowing Tom to put the leash on the dog. The trip to the training center was silent, punctuated only by Emily's occasional sighs from the back seat. Max, sitting next to her, kept his muzzle resting on her leg, as if wanting to savor every second of contact. Upon arrival, they were greeted by Jessica, who awaited them with an understanding smile. "I know it's hard," she said, addressing Emily primarily, "but I promise we'll take very good care of Max, and before you know it, the weekend will arrive, and you'll be together again." The goodbye was brief but emotional. Emily hugged Max one last time, whispering in his ear, "Be a good boy, okay? I love you." Max responded with an affectionate lick, his eyes fixed on hers, as if making a silent promise. As the car drove away, Emily looked out the back window, watching Max and Jessica grow smaller and smaller until they disappeared from view. The journey back home was marked by a heavy silence, broken only by Emily's occasional muffled sobs. The first days without Max were the hardest. Emily wandered around the house, often stopping at the dog's favorite spots, his bed in the corner of the living room, the kitchen mat where he used to wait for treats, the flower bed in the garden he loved to sniff. The house seemed strangely empty and quiet without the sound of Max's paws on the wooden floors. Sarah and Tom made efforts to keep Emily occupied and cheerful. They organized family game nights, trips to the park, and even a visit to the zoo on the first weekend. Although these activities brought momentary smiles to Emily's face, it was evident that she deeply missed her canine companion. On Wednesday, the day of the first visit to the training center finally arrived. Emily could barely concentrate at school, counting the minutes until she could see Max again. When they finally arrived at Healing Paws, her eyes anxiously scanned the place, looking for the familiar golden fur. Jessica greeted them with a warm smile. "Max is doing very well," she said, guiding them to the training area. "He's intelligent and very dedicated. Come see." As they turned a corner, they spotted Max. He was sitting attentively, watching another trainer demonstrating a command. Upon seeing the family, his ears perked up and his tail began to wag furiously, but to everyone's surprise, he remained in place, looking at the trainer as if asking for permission. "Max, come!" the trainer called, and only then did the Labrador run towards the family, jumping joyfully around Emily. "Wow, exclaimed Tom, impressed. "He's already so obedient." Jessica smiled, proud. "Max has a natural talent. He's already mastered basic obedience commands, and we're starting to introduce more specific assistance tasks." Emily knelt down, hugging Max tightly. "You're being a good boy, aren't you?" she whispered. And Max responded with an affectionate lick. During the visit, the family had the opportunity to observe part of Max's training. They saw how he learned to pick up dropped objects, to open doors with a special rope tied to doorknobs, and even how he was being conditioned to remain calm in stressful situations or intense noise. "It's amazing how much he's progressed in such a short time," Sarah commented, watching Max perform tasks with precision. Jessica nodded. "Max has a rare balance between obedience and initiative. He follows commands promptly, but also shows the ability to make independent decisions when necessary. This is crucial for a therapy dog." Before they left, Jessica had a serious conversation with the family. "Max's progress is excellent, but it's important to remember that training is a process. There will be ups and downs. Some days will be harder than others, both for Max and for you. Consistency and patience will be key." On the way back home, the family's mood was visibly lighter. Seeing Max's progress had renewed their enthusiasm for the project. Even Emily, who had been so sad in recent days, now talked animatedly about all the incredible things Max was learning. "Mum, do you think Max will be able to help me with my homework when he comes back?" Emily asked, her eyes shining with excitement. Sarah laughed softly. "Well, sweetie, Max is being trained to help people with special needs, but I'm sure he'll stay by your side while you do your lessons." The following weeks established a new routine for the Wilson family. Wednesdays became the most anticipated day of the week, with visits to the training center. Weekends, when Max returned home, were filled with joy and play, although Sarah and Tom had to constantly remind Emily, and themselves, to maintain discipline and not undo the hard work of the trainers. As the training progressed, Max began to show increasingly impressive skills. He learned to detect subtle changes in body odor, which could indicate changes in blood sugar levels, a valuable skill for assisting people with diabetes. He was also trained to recognize early signs of seizures, being able to alert the person or seek help. One day, during one of their visits, the family had the opportunity to see Max working with a child with autism. The way the dog managed to calm the child during a moment of anxiety was touching. Emily, observing the scene, felt a mixture of pride and a twinge of jealousy that surprised her. "Is everything okay, sweetie?" Sarah asked, noticing her daughter's thoughtful expression. Emily hesitated for a moment before answering. "Saiki, it's just that Max is helping so many people now. Sometimes I wonder if he'll still want to be just my dog when he comes back home." Tom knelt beside Emily, putting an arm around her shoulders. "Oh, my love. Max will always be your special friend. He's just learning to share that special love with other people who really need him. That doesn't diminish the love he has for you." At that moment, as if he had heard the conversation, Max approached Emily, putting his head in her lap and looking at her with those expressive eyes full of affection. Emily couldn't help but smile, feeling her heart fill with love and pride. As Max's training progressed, the Wilson family was also going through their own journey of growth. They were learning about empathy, sacrifice, and the transformative power of helping others. What began as a project to train a dog was becoming an experience that would change their lives forever. The months passed quickly, and with them, Max's training advanced by leaps and bounds. The Golden Labrador had become a sort of celebrity at the Healing Paws Training Center, impressing trainers and visitors with his sharp intelligence and tireless dedication. On a sunny Wednesday afternoon, the Wilson family arrived at the center for their weekly visit, eager to see Max's new progress. Jessica greeted them with an even wider smile than usual. "I have a surprise for you today," she announced, guiding them to an area of the center they had never visited before. It was a space that resembled a small apartment, complete with furniture, appliances, and even a hospital bed. "This is our simulation environment," Jessica explained. "Here we train the dogs in situations that are as close as possible to real life. And today, Max is going to do his first full demonstration." Emily's eyes widened with excitement. Can we see?" she asked. almost jumping with anticipation. Jessica laughed. "Of course. In fact, I'll need your help." She then explained the scenario. Tom would pretend to be a person with reduced mobility, confined to a wheelchair. Sarah would simulate an anxiety attack, and Emily would act as a child with autism, having a moment of sensory overload. "Max will have to respond appropriately to each situation," Jessica said. "Let's see how he does." The demonstration began with Tom in the wheelchair, asking Max to fetch various objects and open doors. The Labrador executed each task with precision, his tail wagging slightly, showing his pleasure in helping. Next, it was Sarah's turn to simulate an anxiety attack. To everyone's surprise, Max immediately positioned himself by her side, applying gentle pressure with his body, a technique known as deep pressure therapy that can calm people in moments of intense stress. Finally, it was Emily's turn. Following Jessica's instructions, she curled up in a corner, covering her ears and making sounds of distress, simulating a sensory crisis. Max approached the situation with surprising gentleness. He slowly approached, lay down beside Emily without touching her, and waited patiently. When Emily finally calmed down and reached out to touch him, Max responded with a gentle caress, offering comfort without being invasive. At the end of the demonstration, even Jessica seemed emotional. "I knew Max was special, but this was exceptional," she said, her voice filled with pride. The Wilson family was speechless, impressed by the transformation of their beloved pet into a highly capable therapy dog. Emily, especially, looked at Max with a mixture of admiration and a new kind of respect. It was at this moment that Jessica made an announcement that would change the course of the story. With Max's extraordinary progress, "I believe he's ready for the next step in his training. We'd like to include him in a pilot program for therapy dogs in a hospital environment." The news fell like a bombshell on the family. On one hand, it was an incredible honor, a validation of Max's exceptional potential. On the other, it meant an extension of the training time and potentially less time at home. "How long would this program last?" Tom asked, his voice betraying a mixture of pride and concern. "It would be another 3 months," Jessica replied. Max would spend most of his time at St. Luke's Hospital, working with patients under supervision. He would still come home on weekends, but weekday visits would be at the hospital, not here at the center. Emily, who until then had been radiant with Max's performance, felt her heart sink. 3 more months, she murmured, her voice barely audible. Sarah, sensing her daughter's emotional turmoil, knelt beside her. "Sweetie, I know it's hard, but think about how many people Max will be able to help at the hospital. Remember how proud you felt today watching him work." Emily nodded slowly, her eyes filling with tears. "I know, but I miss him so much." Tom joined them, forming a family hug. "It's a big decision," he said, looking at Jessica. "Can we have a few days to think about it?" "Of course," Jessica responded understandingly. "Take all the time you need. Meanwhile, Max will continue his regular training here." On the way back home, the car was immersed in thoughtful silence. Each family member was lost in their own thoughts, weighing the pros and cons of the new opportunity. It was Emily who finally broke the silence. If Max goes to the hospital, can we visit him there?" Sarah exchanged a quick glance with Tom before answering. "I believe so, sweetie. We'd have to check with Jessica, but I don't see why not. And," Tom added, trying to lighten the mood, "think of all the amazing stories Max will have to tell us when he comes home on weekends." A small smile formed on Emily's face. "I guess it would be cool to see Max helping people in the hospital, like a real doctor." The days that followed were filled with intense family discussion. They carefully weighed all aspects of the decision. On one hand, the opportunity for Max to participate in a pioneering program was incredible and could open doors for future therapy dogs. On the other hand, it meant more time away from home and an even more challenging routine for everyone. One evening, during dinner, Sarah brought up a point they hadn't considered yet. "You know, this hospital experience could be very valuable, not just for Max, but for us too, especially for you, Emily." The girl looked at her mother, curious. "So what do you mean?" "Well, you've always said you wanted to be a veterinarian when you grow up. But have you ever thought about medicine? Working with people, this could be an opportunity to see what life in a hospital is like, to understand how animals can help in healing people. Emily's eyes lit up at the idea. She had never considered the possibility of working with both people and animals at the same time. It was at this moment that the family realized Max's journey wasn't just about him. It was about all of them growing, learning, and transforming together. The next morning, they made a call to Jessica. The decision was made. Max would participate in the pilot program at St. Luke's Hospital. The weeks that followed were filled with intense preparation. The family received guidance on how hospital visits would be, the rules they should follow, and how they could support Max in this new phase of his training. Meanwhile, at the training center, Max began to be prepared for the hospital environment. He was exposed to the sounds of medical equipment, smells of hospital cleaning products, and even the touch of different textures he might encounter, such as latex gloves and lab coats. The eve of Max's first day at the hospital arrived faster than the family expected. That night, gathered in the living room, each expressed their hopes and concerns. "I'm nervous," Emily admitted, absently stroking Max's head, who was lying beside her. "What if people at the hospital don't like him?" Tom smiled gently. "Sweetie, Max won our hearts at the training center. I'm sure he'll do the same at the hospital." Sarah nodded in agreement. "Besides, remember that this is an opportunity for Max to do what he does best, help people. He was born for this." That night, before going to bed, Emily had a long talk with Max. She knew he couldn't respond with words, but his attentive eyes and occasional head tilts made her feel he understood every word. "You're going to be amazing, Max," she whispered, hugging him tightly. "You're going to help so many people. I'm proud of you. Just don't forget about us, okay?" Max responded with an affectionate lick, as if making a silent promise that no matter where he was or who he was helping, his heart would always belong to the Wilson family. As the house sank into the silence of the night, there was a palpable sense of anticipation in the air. A new chapter was about to begin, not just for Max, but for the entire family. St. Luke's Hospital didn't know it yet, but it was about to receive a four-legged angel, ready to spread love, comfort, and healing through its corridors. Max's first day at St. Luke's Hospital dawned sunny, as if the sky itself wanted to welcome the new member of the team. The Wilson family woke up early, anxious and excited. Emily insisted on putting a blue ribbon on Max's collar. "For good luck," she said. When they arrived at the hospital, they were greeted by Dr. Helen Andrews, the coordinator of the Animal-Assisted Therapy program. With a warm smile, she guided them through the immaculately white corridors. "Max will mainly stay in the pediatric ward," Dr. Helen explained. "We believe his energy and charisma will be particularly beneficial for the hospitalized children." As they walked, Emily noticed how people reacted to Max's presence. Nurses smiled, patients in wheelchairs reached out to pet him, and even hurried doctors paused for a moment to admire the golden-haired Labrador. "See?" Tom whispered to the family. "Max is already making a difference just by being here." When they reached the pediatric ward, they were introduced to the team that would work directly with Max. Among them was John, a young and enthusiastic nurse who would be Max's primary handler during his stay at the hospital. "We're very excited to work with Max," John said, kneeling to greet the dog. "We have some children who are especially eager to meet him." The first patient Max visited was Sophie, an 8-year-old girl undergoing leukemia treatment. When Max entered the room, the girl's eyes lit up in a way her parents hadn't seen in weeks. "Doggy!" Sophie exclaimed, her voice weak but full of joy. With surprising gentleness, Max approached the bed, placing his head within reach of Sophie's hands. The girl sank her fingers into Max's soft fur, and for a moment, everyone in the room could see the weight of the disease dissipate from her face. Emily, observing the scene, felt an emotion she couldn't name. It was a mixture of pride, joy, and a growing understanding of the impact Max could have. Throughout the day, Max visited various patients. For some, he offered silent comfort, lying beside their beds. For others, he performed simple tricks that elicited laughs and applause. In each room he entered, he left behind a trail of smiles and lighter hearts. At the end of the day, as the family prepared to leave, Dr. Helen approached them with a radiant smile. "I can't express how much Max did today," she said. We saw children who hadn't smiled in days become animated. Patients who were reluctant to do physical therapy were motivated to walk just to be able to stroll with Max. He is truly special. On the way back home, the car was filled with a different energy. It was no longer the anxiety or apprehension of previous days, but a sense of purpose and accomplishment. "Mom," Emily suddenly said, breaking the silence, "I think when I grow up, I want to work in a hospital, not just as a doctor, but doing something that involves animals too, like Dr. Helen." Sarah smiled in the rearview mirror. "That would be wonderful, sweetie. Did you see how animals can make a difference in people's lives?" The following weeks established a new routine for the Wilson family. Wednesday visits to the hospital became the highlight of the week. Emily, in particular, began to look forward to these days, not just to see Max, but to interact with the patients and medical staff. One day, during one of her visits, Emily met Matthew, a 10-year-old boy who was in the hospital for a series of corrective surgeries. Matthew was shy and reluctant to interact with people, but he opened up immediately with Max. "He likes you," Emily said, observing how Max gently rested his head on Matthew's lap. Matthew smiled shyly. "I like him too. He doesn't look at me like I'm different." Those words deeply touched Emily. She began to understand that Max's work went far beyond simply performing tricks or offering cuddles. He was helping people feel accepted and loved, regardless of their conditions. Meanwhile, at home, Max's absence during the week was still felt, but in a different way. The family began to see this separation not as a sacrifice, but as an opportunity for growth and positive impact. Tom, inspired by Max's work, began volunteering on weekends at a local animal shelter. Sarah, in turn, started a support group for parents of hospitalized children, using her experience as a pediatrician and the lessons learned from Max's program. One day, during dinner, Tom made a surprising announcement. "I've been thinking," he began, "and I think we should consider adopting another dog." The family looked at him, surprised. "Not to replace Max, of course," he quickly continued, "but to be a companion at home, especially for Emily, and who knows, in the future this dog might also be trained to help other people." The idea was received with enthusiasm, especially by Emily. The prospect of having another dog at home, one that could be her constant companion while Max was at the hospital, excited her immensely. At the hospital, Max continued to surprise everyone with his intuition and dedication. There was a particularly memorable day when he alerted the medical team about a change in a patient's condition even before the monitors detected anything. It happened with Lucas, a 5-year-old boy who was recovering from heart surgery. Max, who was visiting the room, suddenly became agitated, barking and pulling John towards Lucas's bed. Seconds later, the monitors began to sound, indicating a drop in the boy's oxygen saturation. Thanks to Max's early alert, the medical team was able to intervene quickly, avoiding serious complications. This incident not only solidified the importance of the animal-assisted therapy program, but also showed that Max had developed skills that went beyond standard training. The news of Max's sixth sense spread quickly through the hospital. Soon, other departments began to request his visits. Suddenly, Max wasn't just working in the pediatric ward, but also visiting patients in oncology, rehabilitation, and even the ICU. With the growing demand for Max, Dr. Helen approached the Wilson family with a proposal. "We're considering expanding our animal-assisted therapy program," she explained. "We'd like to use Max as a model to train more dogs. This would mean he'd spend more time at the hospital. But it would also mean we could help even more people." The family found themselves facing another difficult decision. On one hand, the idea of Max spending even more time away from home was challenging. On the other, the impact he was having was undeniable, and the opportunity to expand this work was exciting. After much discussion, they agreed to the proposal with one condition. The family wanted to be more actively involved in the program. Sarah offered to give lectures on the benefits of animal-assisted therapy. Tom proposed to help with logistics and planning, and Emily had her own plans. "I want to be a junior trainer," she announced with determination. "I want to learn everything about how to train therapy dogs so that when I grow up, I can do this professionally." Dr. Helen was delighted with the family's enthusiasm. "This is exactly the kind of involvement we need to make this program grow," she said. "You're not just Max's family, you're an integral part of this team." As they prepared for this new phase, the Wilson family reflected on how much their lives had changed since that fateful afternoon when Max protected Emily from an aggressive dog. What began as a project to train a therapy dog had transformed into a mission that was impacting hundreds of lives. Maxie, of course, remained oblivious to the magnitude of his impact. For him, each day was simply an opportunity to do what he loved most, being by people's side, offering comfort, joy, and sometimes even saving lives. As the sun set over St. Luke's Hospital, casting a golden glow through the windows, Max rested at the nurse's station, his head gently resting on the lap of an exhausted nurse. In rooms along the corridor, patients slept a little more peacefully, their hearts a little lighter, thanks to the visit of a four-legged angel. And at home, the Wilson family prepared for bed, their hearts full of purpose and their dreams populated by a bright future, a future where a dog's love could truly change the world. The animal-assisted therapy program at St. Luke's Hospital was about to enter a new era. With Max as its canine ambassador star, Dr. Helen and her team were ready to expand their efforts, bringing hope and healing to even more patients. The Wilson family, now deeply involved in the program, faced new challenges and opportunities. Sarah divided her time between the pediatric clinic and lectures on the benefits of animal-assisted therapy. Her presentations, filled with touching stories and scientific data, attracted increasing attention from the medical community. Tom Gies, with his management experience, became a key player in the expanding program's logistics. He coordinated volunteers, organized schedules, and even helped raise funds for the project. But it was Emily who was undergoing one of the most remarkable transformations. At 11 years old, she had become the youngest junior trainer in the program. Under the careful guidance of John and other experienced trainers, Emily was quickly learning the nuances of therapy dog training. One Saturday afternoon, while working with a young golden retriever named Luna, Emily had a moment of epiphany. "You know, Luna," she said, patting the dog's head, "it's not just about teaching tricks, it's about building a connection, a partnership. You and we're going to help people together." John, observing closely, couldn't help but smile. "You have a natural gift for this, Emily," he commented. "It's rare to see someone so young understand the essence of this work so well." The program was growing rapidly. What started with Max now included a team of 10 dogs, each with their own specialties and unique personalities. There was Bella, a tiny poodle who was perfect for visiting patients with limited mobility. Thor, a gentle Saint Bernard, brought comfort to patients in palliative care. And Luna, Emily's new protégé, showed a special talent for calming children during scary medical procedures. With growth came new challenges. The demand for therapy dog visits far exceeded the current team's capacity. Dr. Helen and Tom spent long hours discussing how to expand the program sustainably without compromising the quality of care. It was during one of these discussions that an innovative idea emerged. "What if we expanded beyond the hospital?" Tom suggested. "We could take the dogs to schools, nursing homes, rehabilitation centers." "Doctor," Helen's eyes lit up with the possibility. "Tom, that's brilliant. We could create a network of animal-assisted therapy across the entire city." The idea quickly gained traction. Soon, they were developing a plan to create the Healing Paws Project, an initiative that would bring the benefits of animal-assisted therapy beyond the hospital walls. Meanwhile, Max continued his work at the hospital, now not just as a therapist, but also as a mentor to the program's new dogs. It was fascinating to see how he gently guided the younger dogs, showing them how to behave in different hospital situations. One day, during a visit to the pediatric oncology ward, Max and Emily met Anna, a 9-year-old girl fighting an aggressive cancer. Anna was in the middle of a particularly difficult chemotherapy treatment and had shut down, refusing to speak or interact with the medical team. When Max entered the room, something changed. Anna, who was curled up in her bed, slowly raised her eyes. Max approached carefully, gently placing his head on the edge of the bed. For several minutes, Nothing happened. Then, slowly, Anna extended her hand and touched Max's soft fur. A small smile, the first in weeks, appeared on her lips. Emily, observing the scene, felt tears in her eyes. She approached the bed, speaking softly. "Hi, Anna. This is Max. He loves making new friends." Anna looked at Emily, then back at Max. "He's beautiful," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. In the days that followed, Anna began to eagerly await Max and Emily's visits. Slowly, she began to open up, first to Max, then to Emily, and finally to her medical team. Anna's transformation did not go unnoticed. Dr. Helen used her as a case study at an important medical conference, highlighting the power of animal-assisted therapy in complex pediatric cases. The success of the program at St. Luke's Hospital and Anna's inspiring story caught the attention of local media. Soon, reporters began to appear, wanting to cover the canine miracle that was happening. At first, the Wilson family felt a bit uncomfortable with all the attention, but Sarah saw this as an opportunity to spread the message about the benefits of animal-assisted therapy to a wider audience. One morning, the family was invited for a live interview on a popular morning television show. Emily was nervous but determined to share her passion for the work she was doing. During the interview, the host asked Emily what motivated her to be so deeply involved in the program, despite her young age. Emily took a deep breath and answered, "You know, when I see Max or Luna entering a hospital room and I see a patient's face light up, I understand that we're doing more than just brightening someone's day. We're giving hope. We're showing that there is kindness and love in the world, even in the most difficult moments. And if I can be a part of that, even if it's just a little bit, then I feel like I'm doing something really important." Her words deeply touched the audience. In the weeks that followed, the program was flooded with offers of help, from volunteers wanting to join the project to companies offering financial support. With this new momentum, the Healing Paws project took off. Within a few months, teams of trained therapy dogs were visiting schools for children with special needs, rehabilitation centers for veterans, and nursing homes for the elderly across the city. The Wilson family found themselves at the center of a gentle revolution. What began as one dog's journey had transformed into a movement that was changing lives throughout the community. Max Ace, of course, remained oblivious to his growing fame. For him, each day was a new opportunity to do what he loved most, being by people's side, offering unconditional comfort. One evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Sarah looked around the table and smiled. "Don't you realize how much our lives have changed in the last few months?" she asked. Tom nodded, his eyes shining with pride. "It's amazing to think that all of this started with Max protecting Emily that day." Emily, who was petting Max under the table, added thoughtfully, "You know, I think Max didn't just protect me that day. He showed us a path, a purpose." The family reflected on these words, recognizing the profound truth in them. What began as an act of protection had transformed into a mission of healing and hope that touched countless lives. As night fell over the city, the Wilson family prepared for another day of work in the Healing Paws project. In hospitals, schools, and homes throughout the region, people eagerly awaited the visit of a furry friend, bringing with them the transformative power of unconditional love. And at the center of it all was Max, the golden Labrador who had shown a family and an entire community the incredible impact that a heart full of love can have on the world. The Healing Paws project had become a phenomenon. What started as a local initiative at St. Luke's Hospital now extended throughout the city of Chicago, touching lives in ways that no one could have predicted. The Wilson family, once an ordinary family unit, now found themselves at the epicenter of a compassionate revolution. Emily, at 13, had become a kind of minor celebrity. Her passion for working with therapy dogs and her natural ability to connect with people of all ages made her the young face of the project. Schools invited her to give talks, inspiring other young people to get involved in volunteer work. At one of these talks, Emily met Mia, a 14-year-old girl who used a wheelchair due to a spinal cord injury. Mia was fascinated by Emily and Max's work. "So how can I get involved?" Mia asked after the talk, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "I've always loved animals, but I thought my condition would prevent me from working with them." Emily smiled, an idea forming in her mind. "First, what if we created a special program for trainers with reduced mobility? I'm sure there are many ways you can help." This conversation led to a new initiative within the project, Paws for All. This sub-program focused on including people with disabilities in the training and handling of therapy dogs, proving that compassion and the desire to help know no physical limits. Meanwhile, Sarah saw her career take an unexpected turn. Her research on the therapeutic effects of animals in medical environments was gaining national recognition. She was invited to lead a pioneering study on the impact of animal-assisted therapy on post-surgical patient recovery. "It's amazing," Sarah commented during a family dinner. "I started my career wanting to heal bodies, and now I'm discovering how to heal souls too." Tom, for his part, faced the challenges of managing a rapidly expanding project. The demand for the Healing Paws project was growing exponentially, and he found himself balancing the needs of volunteers, institutional partners, and Sais, of course, the dogs themselves. "Sometimes I wonder if we're growing too fast," Tom confessed one night, massaging his temples. "I want to help everyone, but we also need to ensure we're taking good care of our team, both human and canine." It was Max who inadvertently offered a solution to this dilemma. During a routine hospital visit, Max began to act strangely around one of the new therapy dogs, a young Labradoodle named Buddy. Max seemed restless, constantly drawing the trainer's attention to Buddy. Upon closer observation, they discovered that Buddy was showing subtle signs of stress, signs that only Max's experienced eye had noticed. This led to a complete reassessment of the project's animal welfare protocols. "Max taught us a valuable lesson," Tom said during the next team meeting. "We can't let ourselves get carried away by enthusiasm to the point of neglecting the well-being of our four-legged partners. They are the heart of this project." This experience led to the creation of a new system for monitoring the dog's welfare with mandatory rest periods and regular stress assessments. The Dignified Retirement Program was also established, ensuring that older dogs could retire comfortably in loving homes. As the project grew, so did its impact on the community. Stories of transformation and healing multiplied. There was Mr. Johnson, an elderly man in a nursing home who hadn't spoken for months after a stroke, but who began to form words again during Luna's visits. Or little Sophie, an autistic girl who, through her interactions with Max, began to develop social skills that her therapists had thought impossible. The success of the Healing Paws project didn't go unnoticed by the authorities. One day, the Wilson family received a surprising phone call. The mayor of Chicago wanted to meet them. During the meeting in the mayor's office, Emily, nervous but determined, presented an ambitious proposal to make Chicago the first therapy animal-friendly city in the United States. "Imagine a city where therapy dogs are welcome in all hospitals, schools, and public institutions," Emily explained, her voice gaining confidence as she spoke, "where the healing power of animals is recognized and integrated into our health and social welfare services." The mayor listened attentively, clearly impressed by the young girl's passion and vision. "It's a fascinating idea," he said. "It will require a lot of work and many changes, but I believe it could bring immeasurable benefits to our city." In the weeks that followed, the Wilson family found themselves involved in meetings with city council members, municipal secretaries, and community leaders. The Healing Paws project was about to become public policy. As excitement around the project grew, the Wilson family made sure to keep their feet on the ground. They knew that the true impact of their work wasn't in the spotlight or the headlines, but in the quiet moments of connection between humans and animals. One afternoon, Emily was at the hospital with Max, visiting Anna, the girl they had met months ago during her cancer treatment. Anna was having a particularly difficult day, struggling with the side effects of a new medication. Max, sensing Anna's discomfort, gently climbed onto the bed and snuggled up next to her. Anna wrapped her arms around Max's neck, burying her face in his soft fur. "Thank you for being here," Anna whispered. "You make me feel strong again." Emily, observing the scene, felt tears in her eyes. At that moment, All the challenges, all the sleepless nights, all the hard work were worth it. This was the true heart of the Healing Pause project, not the policies or programs, but these moments of pure connection and healing. As the sun set over Chicago, casting a golden glow through the hospital windows, Emily reflected on the incredible journey her family had undertaken. From a simple act of protection by Max, they had created something that was changing their city and inspiring people across the country. And yet, at the center of it all, was the simple and pure love between humans and animals. A love that healed, that inspired, that transformed. A love that Emily knew would continue to create waves of change for many years to come. That night, as the Wilson family gathered for dinner, there was a sense of gratitude and purpose in the air. They had embarked on a journey to train a dog, and in the process, they had discovered a life mission. Max, oblivious to the big changes he had inspired, rested contentedly at Emily's feet. For him, each day was simply a new opportunity to do what he loved most, being by people's side, offering unconditional love and silent healing. And so, as the city outside prepared for a new era of compassion and healing, the Wilson family prepared for another day of work in the Healing Pause project. A project that had started with one dog, but now touched countless lives, proving that sometimes, the greatest changes begin with 4 paws and a heart full of love.